Session is Motivated, Energized and Capable Faculty, and the speaker for today's session is Professor Dr. Avinash Chandra Pandey. So I feel privileged and honored to introduce Professor Dr. Avinash Pandey sir in front of you. Dr. Pandey is the Director, Inter-University Accelerator Center, Delhi, and Director, Inter-University Center, Bangalore. Before joining IUAC, he was a Vice Chancellor of Bundelkhand University from 2012 to 2015. He has earlier been Professor at University of Allahabad. After obtaining Master's and DPhil degree from University of Allahabad. As a principal investigator, he led to development of 3 new centers in Allahabad University. He is accredited with the development of nanoscience and nanotechnology application center besides setting up high fluence ion beam facility, a state-of-art ion implanter facility, the premises of University of Allahabad and Innovation Center, weather station, animal research facility at Bundelkhand University. He has earlier been a professor and founder head, Department of Atmospheric and Ocean Sciences and coordinator of K Banerjee Center of Atmospheric and Ocean Studies, M. N. Saha Center of Space Studies at University Allahabad. He is also an adjunct professor at Michigan Technology, USA. His research has focused in developing novel nanomaterial for various real-life applications from LED, PDP, biomedical and diagnostic, and new fluorescent carbon material, besides non-linear dynamics and surface motivation using ion beams. Sir has 20 patents, which includes intellectual property, technological innovations, new product, etc. Sir has taken 30 projects as a principal investigator, and the total worth of projects handled as a principal investigator was 37 crore rupees. Sir has lectured in many international institutions of repute, regular academic visits to many countries, and helped to develop research capability in a large number of faculty members of neighboring institutions to take up independent coordinated research in career growth of user facilities in university setup. Professor Pandey has been an associate of ICTP, Trustee Italy. He has been a member of governing boards and academic council, courts, and many institutions such as INST, Mohali, Aries, Nainital, Dr. Harisinghar University, Sagar, and University of Allahabad. He is a member of many academic societies as the American Physical Society, Ion Beam Society of India, Indian Meteorological Society, Computer Society of India, IETE Biotechnology Research Society of India, and many more. On behalf of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapit Vishwavidyalaya, I welcome you, sir. Thank you. In fact, I invite you for your deliberation, sir. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Monica ji, for the nice introduction. Can I share my screen?
Sure, sir.
So I'll be talking about the one topic which is their motivated, energized, and capable faculty, and that is required for creating our nation as a strong nation. So before that, I would like to give a brief introduction about my center, and this center is the first center in terms of capacity building in a domain-specific area, and that is accelerator-based research. It was incepted long back in 1984. A file I found a letter of Mrs. Gandhi. The day before she was assassinated, she signed for this center. So just one day before, she cleared that this center shall be established, and next day she was assassinated. So this is one center which is catering to the requirement of the country for developing capacity of teachers, researchers, and also students. And we have helped more than 1,000 students who have got their PhD from this facility operates on the clock. There is a disturbance. I request for kindly mute yourself. There is too much disturbance. Kindly mute Monica ji. Yeah. So because this was one such center, and after that we also set up one center which is specifically for teacher education. I'll be coming to that. So just give you an idea how big our system is, the higher education institutions. If I take this iShare report, you all know, if you come from higher education institutions. So in 2019-20, if I total the number of students who are pursuing their higher education, that comes about 2.5 crores. And about 1,000 universities are there, 42,000 colleges, and out of that 42,000 colleges, about 11,000 colleges are standalone institutions. That means they are pursuing only one discipline or two disciplines, that all. So this is the largest system. And if I take a conservative view of faculty-student ratio about 1:25, so to cater to the requirement of this 2.5 crore, about 10 lakh teachers are there in higher education institutions. And if I add the professional courses, the engineering stream also, so in that the enrollment is about 10 lakh. And if I again take a conservative view of faculty-student ratio of 1:20, so that comes about 5 lakh teachers in that system. So that totals like the 10 lakhs in higher education and 5 lakhs in professional courses. So total teachers become 15 lakhs. And this 15 lakh teachers are, again, there is a hierarchy. So there is a standard funding pattern, 1:2, 2:4. So 9 lakh teachers are there in the higher education institutions. They are assistant professor, 3.75 to 4.5 lakhs, associate, and 1.5 to 2.25 lakh professor. Why I have given this statistics? This is the only profession, the teaching profession, where we enter after getting our degree. If I get master's or PhD from abroad, I'm supposed to take classes the next day. You take any of the services, there is a mandatory training period in which you have to go and you have to get registered, and unless otherwise you complete your training, you are not allowed to start your job. So be it civil services, be it whatever, you take the name and you'll find academies, you'll find those places where the professionals or the people who enter into the services, they are trained first. We also have several limitations because we may be good researcher, but handling a group of students who are having different ability spectrum, we need some kind of pedagogical tools also. We need to understand how we are going to engage them. So that is one challenge which need to be understood. So I'll talk about these things later on. But before that, I would like to introduce you about my system and how this system is being replicated for teacher education. So another important thing, I have taken it from very recently on 12th July. This picture was given by James Webb Telescope. Why it is important? To emphasize that a teacher, not like other professions. In other professions, you get training and then you start working. You need not go for continuous learning. But in higher education institutions, we are supposed to go for learning every day. Our learning is never complete. Why we say learning never complete? Because we have to handle youngsters. And youngsters means if I am 50 years of age, every year I am getting a student who has just qualified or just passed the 12th examination. He has entered into the system as a BSc student or whatever. So he is smarter than me, as if I compare from my old days when I was entering into the system. And also I have to prepare that youngster for not tomorrow, for the future generation. So there are two important things I have to handle. I have to train youngsters who are smarter, And I have to make them more smarter for the future generations, because we do not know what kind of problems they are going to face. So our job is to keep them ready to face any kind of challenges. So I should not say that my learning is complete and I should not go for a training program. Why to have this faculty development program? So this is the biggest ego crushing device. What I show you here is, you see specks in this particular picture, and in this particular picture you will see many such small tiny dots. And very recently we have found that one such dot is having diameter equal to the distance of Sun and Saturn, and it was not known. After so many years, we came to know about this star, which is a speck in this particular picture. And we consider that we are the more knowledgeable and we are the most powerful people. No. So this is what I wanted to start with, that this is ultimate ego crushing device. If I consider myself that I know everything, no. Whenever I say that I know, that means I cease learning. The moment हमने कहा कि अब को हमको सब आता है, I know, that means हमने ये मान लिया कि अब हमको सीखना नहीं, हमारा सीखना बंद हो गया. और इसमें आप देख रहे होंगे ना, this picture shows stellar nursery where many stars are born. So this is a nursery where several stars are being born, and there is a possibility that we can get atmosphere also at a distant planet. The ultimate objective of showing this picture is that we should always be humble, especially when we are into the teaching profession and also when we are in the higher education institutions. So this is another area where we wanted to work. And two biggest question. I have shown one question, that what is the expanse of universe? So that is telescope. The other important question which we wanted to know was, what is the building block? What is the ultimate, or we can say that zero? So for that, we have these accelerators, and this accelerator is nothing. The way we start playing during our childhood, what we do, we take a small stone and we try to throw it with the fullest energy what we have. Likewise, the same activity is being performed here, where we take, instead of a stone, we take atom, the charged ion, and then we give as much energy as we can. So that is what we have. Our capability is only for few million volts. And if you have heard about CERN, the collider which is there in Geneva, they have got 1,000 times more energy they can throw the particles. And many such things can be understood about the matter. And many such facilities are there in the country. In Indore itself, you might have come to know that there is a RR-CAT, which is sitting next to your place. And similar such facilities are there in the country. And I can give you this picture wherein we are here, Inter-University Accelerator Center. Similar facility is there, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, RR-CAT I have just shown, that is there in Indore, the Kolkata facility, the BARC facility, and many such other facilities which are there in the universities. So this gives you one idea that if I wish to prove that energy mass equivalence is there, the proton and its antiparticle can be annihilated, the mass gets converted into energy. Many such things are there which we do pursue. And why it is important to build capacity? This is one example in which I can demonstrate that over a period of 70 years, from 1939 to 2009, 28% of physicists, they were either inspired or they were facilitated by the research based on accelerator science. And every 3 years, one Nobel Prize comes from accelerator-based research. So you can understand what importance we play in terms of capacity building, which is very narrow area, and that is domain-specific capacity building. And these are many such accelerators, which I'm not going to talk about. I'll just give an example. I was showing you that speck, which was a macroscopic world, the universe. Instead of, if you have a small surface which cannot be seen by eye, and if it is bombarded, if I'm throwing ions to this particular surface, you can see if I keep on sending the energetic particles, you see the surface gets this kind of evolution takes place, and after few hours you can see that some towers have come, but these towers cannot be seen by eyes, and they are nano towers. They are smallest in dimension, for which you require microscope, and that microscope is also a special microscope, is electron microscope. So I was talking about the space, and this is one such service which we do here. While all the satellites which are sent to space, they are first tested here whether they are going to survive in the space due to cosmic radiation or not. And also we do go for geochronology. That means we do date. Date means giving the age of that particular phenomena. And you might have heard about carbon dating. So instead of carbon dating, we have many such other facilities by which we can go for geological dating. And this is a date which is given to a person who is not more, right? So we have this kind of facility. Now, coming to another experience, after the successful completion of our center's activity, Government of India thought, why don't we have this kind of IUC? Our center is IUC, means Inter-University Consortium. Inter-University Consortium means the university researchers, they are given all the facility to pursue their research in the area in which we profess. Likewise, this IUC TE, the teacher education, has been set up in BHU, and they will also look for the sustainable ecosystem for capacity building in the field of teacher education. So whatever you heard about capable, energized, motivated, I may be capable, I have got all the degree, but throughout my life cycle, if I am motivated to pursue research, motivated to engage my class, and also always I feel energized. It is not that I'm going with a sort of a force that somebody will mark me absent. It is the urge that comes from my within that I have to go and engage my class, and I have to perform well so that the smiling faces are there in the classroom. So for that, we have to have a good gearing up in that direction. So for that matter, this particular teacher educator part is to be handled at IUCs, and this IUC has already come, where we can have a hub center for innovation, excellence. We will be teaching you the pedagogy, which is constantly evolving, the scientific practices in teacher education, the common platform where we can develop and share resources. This is open education resources, MOOCs, effective design, development, integration of technology, which is very important. And this COVID forced you to, otherwise it was not possible for me to come to your place, and many such resource persons, even the participants, they have joined online. And this is possible only when the technology has been integrated in such a manner that learning, teaching becomes easier. So we will have also several such collaborations, and Monica ji was reading that I was with ICTP, similar kind of facilities to be set up in our country, where continuous capacity building takes place in different areas, different domains. So that is what the purpose is. If I go by the Indian education system, higher education system, I'll just touch all those important developments which took place and why we have to look at that part. So, you know, Takshila was there, that dates back 5th century to 6th century BC. And it continued till 5th century AD. It was established now in Pakistan, the Gandhar. And there were Vedas and 18 arts, and then law school, medical school, school of military science. So the Ayurveda, the Charak Sangita was studied at Takshila. Arthashastra by Chanakya was composed at Takshila. University of Nalanda, 5th century to 12th century in India, was one of the most important and most talked about the seat of learning. And it was having a concept of residential universities, about 10,000 students, 2,000 teachers. And you know, the faculty student ratio I took, if you remember, I took 1:25 or 1:20. At that time, the faculty student ratio was 1:5. And if you go by this QS ranking, so QS ranking, many of the universities, they have slipped down because the teacher-student ratio has gone down. No, is adverse from their standards. So teacher-student ratio is also important. And there was 9-storied building which was having several texts. And it is said that when it was burnt, several months took to, like, the fume was coming from that storage where the library was there. In that Nalanda school, they studied science, astronomy, medicine, and logic as diligently the way we are studying these days, to metaphysics, philosophy, Sankhya, Yoga, Shastra. Many such scriptures were there, and Nagarjuna, the Buddhism, philosophy, that, and also the discourses that took place. Many people came from outside, and we also had a transcending ethnic and national boundary. Foreign philosophy were also studied. The people were coming from different places, be it Korea, Japan, China. So now we are struggling to get international students. At that point of time, international students themselves, they used to come to Nalanda seat of learning, be it China, Tibet, Indonesia, Persia, you name the part of the globe and you'll find students coming to that place. So that represents the concept of university of that ancient period. And suddenly something happened and that all got vanished. Modern universities came later on after a gap of 600 years when the Nalanda was destructed. And after 769 years of the University of Bologna in Italy came into picture. And then we set up 3 universities, Bombay, Kolkata, Madras, and they are all called modern universities. And they came into 1857. And University of Allahabad came 30 years later from where I graduated. Allahabad was set up in 1887. And these universities, they started their career as a examining body, right? Because when you start fresh, you don't have a good number of brilliant teachers, or you can engage people. So gradually we started. And then what happened, that there was an Indian Universities Commission, which was appointed in 1902. And the Indian Universities Act was passed in 1904. And then after that, we started evolving, and that continues. And in 2020, when this NEP has come, we are still in the process of consolidating the gains. I gave you the number that there are 11,000 colleges that are standalone. They need to be made multidisciplinary. So these are some of the challenges now we have started taking up. Why our existence become sort of challenged is because this era is called as a dawn of knowledge era, where the science and technology has taken a lead. Earlier, people were philosophers. They used to think about something, propound some theory. Now we can have evidence-based research, and we have marveled several such things where we can have variety of comfort, which is because of the science and technology. And that has led to globalization, that has led to different kind of competition. And also innovation has become a buzzword. Everywhere you'll find innovation. People are trying to talk about innovation. And simultaneously, if you do this, Earth is also being exploited like anything. So Earth is at stress. The planet on which we live is, because of the uncontrolled exploitation, this is again under stress. As a teacher, as a facilitator, we have to look all these aspects, and then I'll come to other aspect, how we are going to equip ourselves, to groom ourselves. So this century is the century of knowledge, and the process of transition is still on. 20th century, what we saw was, because of this advancement in science and technology, so, and because of that human development, the industrial growth, and also eradication of poverty in certain region of world, because of that can always be attributed to technological breakthrough, nothing else. So that is what important role which we played while having this SNT, science and technology, in the center stage. We have to recalibrate whatever we did. Now we have to recalibrate. Why we have to recalibrate? I will give you some picture, some idea about that. So progress of science and was kind of monolithic. It was in isolation. So whatever was developed, it was unitary, did not take into the confidence or into the ambit of its own the other important aspect. For example, societal evolution. So societal evolution, if I compare how the technology growth was there and how the society progressed. So you take, when you deposit your money, you look for what is the interest rate you are going to have. And then you compute that in these many years, your money will be doubled. I take example here in which science has grown exponentially at the rate of about 7% per annum. That means every 10 years to 15 years, it got doubled. And over a period of 300 years, the factor by which it multiplied was 1 million, right? So you can see what we have done in the last 300 years. So on the other side, society has evolved over a period of 10,000 years. And in 300 years, we have outpaced the society. So many of the things which has come up, we have not understood whether it is useful for us or it is not. So we have started using, or in a way, we can say that indiscriminate use of the technology, and that has led to several such ailments which now need to be understood properly. So scientific revolution has outpaced the social revolution for a century now. And as a consequence, what you have noticed, there is a problem relating to environment, problem relating to energy. The health is also under question. Natural hazards, which are very common. Extinctions, when I talk about that, many biological species, they are getting extinct. Unsustainable consumption, if you take too much, which Earth cannot provide, cannot sustain, it becomes unsustainable. And most important, there is a divide of haves or have-nots. It may be a digital divide also. During COVID, you might have come to know that many of the people were seamlessly studying, but some of them could not because the connectivity was not there, because the classes could not be engaged due to non-availability of digital resources. So that kind of divide is coming into picture. And because of that, the paradox of our time is that despite that, the fact that we did very good in terms of science and technology, the economic progress and improvement in the quality of life, we have these issues. The inequalities have started growing. The gap between haves and have-nots have again widened up. The knowledge divide is also there. And because of that, you could see everywhere the world is troubled. You might have also come to know that Ukraine crisis is still there. There is a crisis. Wherever you go, you'll find some kind of inequality, knowledge divide leading to troubled world. The consumption, which is increasing at a very high speed, the resources are depleting and the planet is becoming stressed. And because of that, climate change, the global warming related issues have already started surfacing up. And that leads to this kind of scenario. Wherever you go, the water bodies, you will find like this. This is not one example. You are blessed that this university is blessed because they are in Indore. Indore is the cleanest city in the country. But wherever you go, especially in Delhi, it becomes inhabitable unless otherwise you have this mask or this kind of, you cannot travel, you cannot walk because this becomes gas chamber. So if you go for overconsumption, it becomes unsustainable. And this is not limited to one part. There are many other things. Very recently, you might have also heard that people were going to take a bath in Yamuna and there was too much of foam. So people said that this is the kind of Jagasur, some kind of some kind of demon was there. And you see, this lady is offering a prayer to sun god, but what she has, not the clean water, but the foam which is coming because of some effluent. So that is what the problem is. And in many of the cities, these water bodies are just getting extinct. And I take example of Varanasi. You know, Varanasi means two rivers, Varuna and Asi. Asi has gone. Asi is nowhere found as a river, but it is converted into a kind of nala, a drain. Other important issues are the ailing population and everyday zoonotic sort of thing is coming. We suffered from COVID. And very recently, third case was reported yesterday only of monkeypox in the country. That means the diseases that were only limited to the animals where they were the host. Now it is the virus is jumping from animal to human being, and we suffered a lot. And that is also happening. The reason may be because we are not minding, we don't have any concern for those species, and if they will feel themselves endangered, they would like to survive, and then they will jump from their host, which is animal, to the human body. And that is what we can see. Many such extinction has taken place, and many of the species have just vanished from the earth. So the focus of our new age science is, and I am reminding you that as a teacher of higher education institutions, our teaching should not only limited to giving some knowledge in some area that is all available in your Google and all that. So we have to connect our research to the Millennium Development Goals, hunger, health, education, environment. Unless otherwise you do that, these three rights for which we write, we call it human rights. Human rights is composed of several such rights: civil rights, political rights, economic rights, social rights, cultural rights. You can always fight for your civil rights and political rights, but these three rights, the economic, social, and cultural, will never ever be available to you, because if you don't get the sphere of human beings working, producing, servicing, that employment, social rights, the standard of living, you see the kind of water bodies we have, and cultural rights, the ethnic culture, subcultures, arts and science. These three rights will always be neglected, and that will not fulfill the goal of having human rights as a guarantee for every individual. And because of that, we have started talking about fuel, food, and finances, which has now been converted as energy, environment, and employment. It is the way we represent our problem. So somebody said that is a 3F, somebody said that is 3E, but ultimately we are working for what? For sustainable, and that can only be done when we can achieve the Millennium Development Goal. And especially when our country, the population has just overpassed the Chinese population. So despite the fact we have the smartest people on the earth. When I say smartest people on the earth, that was a study of United Nations in which it was said, they studied the studying pattern of many countries, the students, how they study. So the two examples are for you. In China, they found that students are diligent. They learn each and every line of a textbook when they study, and if they don't understand, they go to their teacher. They try to get as much as they can from their teachers. In India, situation is different. We are intelligent, but we are smarter. What we do, we study only that part which is important from the viewpoint of examination. So we know that these are the questions that may be asked in our examination, and we focus only that part, and we get good marks because our focus is only to get good marks in our examination. And that is another important worry which we need to understand. So our country is being looked at from a different perspective, and people have a high hope in terms of fastest growing large economy, in terms of the contribution to global GDP, and also in terms of investment which we are going to make, the macroeconomic indicators. So we have got to have, this time there is a global growth engine, and these are some of the MDPs, the Millennium Development Goals. We always keep in mind poverty, hunger, good health, well-being, quality education, gender equality. So you might be wondering that why this is being introduced in capable, motivated, energized faculty. It is our responsibility to make our student responsive to these kind of challenges. Unless otherwise they are equipped with these kind of tools, the entire effort shall be wasted. If they are not going to contribute to your economy, to your country, what is the purpose of getting the education? So what science can do, it has to be And because of that, we have started talking about the holistic education. We are not supposed to have the compartmentalized education in which if I pursue something, I don't have anything to say with the other discipline. And this is going to be more inclusive view of the science. And in coming days, the science will also look for sustainable development, the talking with the other streams, and also the societal engagement, which I talked about, the Millennium Development Goal, for which we can have policy linkages. And also the science and society has to coexist together, where the values, methods, and products in the science should lead to society in terms of supporting the society from the viewpoint of equity. Equity means everybody should get benefited, the sustenance, and also acceptability. And that is what is important, for which we are going to work. And the other important challenge before you is why I said the youngsters are to be trained for the new generation. So earlier the time domain was giving a good window for you. For example, in 1830, when the Faraday gave laws of electricity, 50 years was given to you for converting into technology. In 53, when we got to know about DNA structure, 20 years was available for you to develop genetic engineering. But in 1991, when we got carbon nanotube, within 10 years, it got implemented in logic circuits. That means the time domain has started shrinking. And what you can see, what I have tried to summarize here, that the new information has been generated in the last 30 years as compared to 5,000 years. That means whatever we developed in 5,000 years, the longest window, we got in 30 years. That means the exponential growth, I'm again emphasizing, and that makes you on toes. Unless otherwise you are also aware that what changes are taking place, you cannot make your students smarter. And people talk about industrial revolution 4.0. This particular, the 18th century, 20th century, the beginning of the 70th, you got this third industrial revolution. And you will also be surprised to know that by having a few years, you'll find that another industrial revolution is going to take place. So by the time we are going to generate resources, the human resources, train the people to handle this kind of disruptions which is going to take place, the complexity will rise to the level that you have to think again. So the time domain is also important, and this is also exemplified by way of this example, in which 75 years took for telephone, but Pokemon Go, within 1 month, it reached to 100 million customers. So that means, so the thing which took 75 years, the technology which came, and I also applied out of turn, then I got this telephone connection. Otherwise, it was a long waiting period. Web services took 7 years to reach everybody. But nowadays, whatever comes, it reaches to 100 million people within no time, within 1 month. So the importance is what? We have to keep focusing on the aspect, the time aspect, which is very important. So this NEP talks about many things, which is in a nutshell, whatever I have talked about. It talks about holistic, futuristic, flexible. Flexible comes where, because of the time domain, because of the complexity of problem, for value-based, and important thing is value-based quality at the higher education. It is not going to be the cutthroat competition. We are not supposed to shed our values. We have been always working towards Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So that part is also there. And for that, for promoting access, equity, affordability, accountability, quality. And that aims at what? Developing good, thoughtful, well-rounded, creative individuals by enabling them to develop their character, ethical and constitutional values, intellectual curiosity, scientific temper, creativity, and spirit of service. So this is what we are supposed to, as a teacher of higher education institution, we are supposed to what? We have to develop our students like this. And that is not possible that it is only by passive learning, somebody learns something, and by rote learning, he develops some sort of skill of memorizing things. That is not going to happen. And for that, we have to behave as a, I'm not saying that we have to behave as a good human being and global citizen. It is the product which we are going to produce. They have to be good human being and global citizen. So obviously, if I am going to produce something, I should also behave like this. So that is what is expected. So in this case, we are in the process of going for very variety of such changes. So this is one important thing, that LOCF, that learning outcome based framework, which is coming up. And for that, we have to train ourselves for this assessment. The assessment is not going to be the summative assessment. We have to train ourselves for formative assessment. And also for that, we have to have several faculty development programs, and we have to get connected to these programs so that my lifelong learning is ensured. So I'm not supposed to only get some degree long back and have a degree, MSc, PhD. No, that is not going to work, because every day I have to develop myself to the requirement to the best ability of mine to cater to the students who are coming to our system. So from the viewpoint of the excellence in research with global and social impact, outcome-based education, professional services and social engagement, community engagement, the third dimension is being added, your teaching, research plus community engagement. And need not be emphasized again, we have to go for sustainable organization. The importance which I would like to emphasize here is, earlier we were focusing only on lower level of competencies. So as a teacher, we used to frame questions, whatever the taxonomy we used to have, we focus more on remembering, understanding and applying. But now the declared learning outcomes will think of changing competencies. That is, the higher level of competencies are to be developed among the students. They should be given an opportunity to analyze the situation, to evaluate, and then contribute as a creator, creating the knowledge. So this necessitates the changes in assessment, and we have to train ourselves how we are going to frame the questions so that insightful questioning is already there, so that the student is always inquisitive to know more. It is not a kind of passive thing. Which the other important thing which I would like to focus, why this is important, that traditional assessment, if we know something, like this is the line in which it is shown understanding, and this is passing the examination. So if you have good understanding, you have understood everything, the chances of failing examination is 0%. You will pass. Whatever question I will ask, you will be able to answer. If you don't understand, or the understanding is poor, the chances that you will fail is 25%. Good understanding, passing examination, 25%. These three quadrants have very obvious sort of things. But here what happens, I'm modest to say, this number is large. People do not know. They have a piece of paper that is degree certificate, and they pass examination. And as a teacher, you might have also encountered that this kind of group is becoming more alarming from our perspective, that there is something wrong with the system. So if you don't understand how you pass the examination, that is another important thing which need to be looked, and we have to modify the assessment process. Changing employability skill, life skills which are required for 21st century skills. And you might have seen in US, the importance is what? You should have gun, and wherever you want to go and start the firing. Violence and terror, changing skill sets. I have taken one example. It doesn't mean that it is required here, but life skills are one important thing. Learner profile has changed. Why learner profile has changed? Because my family structure has completely changed. I was working. When I was small, I was in a joint family. Now we are all working, so I do not have time to look after my children. So the children whom you are getting might not have got the full attention of their parents. I have just explained how this knowledge has exponentially grown. The changed work environment because of the industry 4.0, which is coming up. Everybody is having mobile. They are all connected to virtual world. Accessing information is not a problem. You just click something and you will get a load of Google pages. And there are many concerns relating to nuclear families, adolescent concerns, which need to be handled. And I just gave an example of higher order thinking skills. that need to be put in our curricula, how we are going to compare, how we are going to invent, how we can deconstruct, judging, critiquing. These were not there in our assessment skills, which we had when we were focusing only on lower order of competencies. So and then important thing is what? We are focusing on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Science, discover and describe; technology, invent and innovate; engineering, control, modify, or design materials, the processes and systems; and mathematics is the symbolic language to represent real life. This system-based education is also becoming important. The demand assessment, you see, there are different sectors for which we have to work. So we have to create manpower which is usable for the society, for both the purposes, for the society as well as they can earn something for their livelihood. So traditional sectors, then sunrise and thrust sector, you see how this is evolving, and then industry 4.0 enabled sectors. So demand is continuously changing. So what we have to do, the time domain has shrunk. So the curriculum, the instructions, they are to change according to the requirement for which the student is looking for. The applications in real life, you can see many such things which have come up, and accordingly, they have to be given some problem so that they can master over that problem, and then they can be useful for the society. Their employability skill is also important. So these are some examples. It is not the exhaustive list of such kind of thing. The important thing is that in case of holistic development, you have to have, there is no separation between vocational and academics. So the integration of three verticals, the skills, vocational education, and general education is already there. We have come out with the guideline, and we have to facilitate the students so that they can cross migrate from one area to other. One area means they can take some of their skills, they can have this general education, or they can go for the conceptual building, or they can use the technology. They have to have critical thinking ability, which is the higher level of competencies. And learning environment means the multiple entry exit, which is just come up. So as a teacher of higher education institution, we have to all imbibe these philosophies, which are being translated into action by way of several such enabling instruments. Important part, the action learning formula. I will, if suppose I ask you a question that you have 12 balls, and out of that 12 balls, one ball is dissimilar, means having less weight or more weight. You have got a weighing balance. In 3 steps, you have to identify which ball is dissimilar to the rest of 11 balls, right? This is a kind of inquisitive or insightful questioning, which we have to every day generate these kind of questions, so that the student does not find that this answer is already there in our Medici or some solved problem, and then he or she simply remembers by rote learning, and learning is gone. So for that, the knowledge acquisition, action learning, experiential learning, complex problem solving, and there are learning groups in which they can. So this is one such a way by which learning occurs through program knowledge or traditional instruction, but there is a Q, insightful questioning. I was talking about that UN study, this Q is missing. People go through the unsolved paper and they find that this question is asked repeatedly, and they only prepare that question that has got maximum probability to be asked for. So this insightful questioning, and as a teacher of higher education, we are supposed to go for creating a question bank which is ours and which is never repeated. So that is what is a challenge. So there are many challenges, strategies for that. I'm not going to talk about this because you are all having all these things. Earlier it was teacher-centered. We are now having student-centered, problem-based, integrated, community-based, which I have given in some way in my lecture in the previous talks, previous slides. Teaching and learning, we can have this integrated way of teaching in which not only the knowledge, but also skills, attitudes, behavior, they all get addressed. Standalone teaching is only limited to your knowledge, which can always be done if a student studies on his own. On the job, conscious learning, unconscious learning, off the job, how we can tailor the program so that the learning takes place most. And these are some of the things, LOCF, which I gave an example. I'm not going to give the details. Again, somebody must be giving this in your FDP. LOCF, and also we need to know what is course learning outcome, what is program learning outcome, how we are going to have this graduate profile, what are the level descriptors. And we have just come out with the National Education, Higher Education Quality Framework. So as a teacher, you need to go through those documents and prepare yourself so that this entire gamut can be understood. And when you are preparing the syllabus, you are opting for some kind of teaching method by which the learning activities or the assessment tools are put into those planning process, the delivery. And then there is a sort of assessment evaluation, the outcome, what we are expected, what we expect from a particular course, from a particular program. This need to be understood in a proper manner so that whatever we are going to deliver is prepared accordingly. And that requires different kind of surveys, and that surveys can always be programmed by you, by having a group of people from your university, from your institution, to know what impact it has done. Third-party assessment can also be a possibility. And if I talk about a different kind of ranking framework, our responsibility as a teacher also becomes important. I have given one such example in which if I talk about incubation to startups, the MOOCs, globalization, internationalization of our higher education, this automation is also there, H-index, satellite technology incubation, many such things are there, and we have to write for funding so that we can have DST PERS, DBT Builder if you come from a science background, or we can have small projects from different funding agencies. So we have to develop all these capabilities, and this is all required in your system. So I'll complete myself here. So when we think we know, we cease to learn. It is not my quote. It was said by Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan ji. So always teacher's learning does not come to end. He has to have lifelong learning. And for that, we have to be geared up to take all such kind of things. Albert Einstein, he said, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And if we keep this in our mind always, that we are not going to memorize some of the fact, and we are not only forcing our students to memorize some facts, but I am training the mind to think something. That is what our contribution would be. And this is imbibed in this faculty development program. And as far as our text is concerned, in our parampara, in our knowledge system, we always used to say that ano bhadra kritavo yantu vishwatah. That means जो भी अच्छे विचार कहीं से भी मिलते हैं आपको, whatever good idea come from wherever, you have to accept. And the other important thing is स्वाध्याय की कभी उपेक्षा. The self learning will always be helpful. And the last thing is that I'm not only lecturer in a class, I'm not only anchor in a class, but I'm going to establish a dialogue between me and my students. So monologue ke bajaye, what we have to do, we have to develop dialogue, and that is what we call sahavirya karvavahe. That is what is Kathopanishad, and this is all. And because of that, the Nalanda school of learning, the Takshila, they survived, and they not only survived, they attracted a good quality student from across the world, and that is what is expected from coming to this. As a teacher, again, we have to emphasize that this is not one model which is acceptable. We have several such models. The McGregor's theory is there. The econological model is also there. But as a teacher, this part, the self-actualization. If I'm going to the class, is not driven by that I'm getting some salary, is because I'm doing some service, and that comes into me when I become a teacher or I take the role of a teacher in the class. So don't go for this, that physiological need and safety needs. This hierarchy is to be cut short. There is a short circuiting, and we have to work only for what? Self-actualization. Whatever you do, you go for the satisfaction of the students, and you are preparing youngsters for the future generation is important. For that you are working. Don't work only for deficiency needs. Do for something which is very much required. And as a teacher, we are required to have these kind of positive way of looking at our job profile. We are not ऐसे कहें कि we are not servants, नौकर नहीं, हम खुद अपने को कंट्रोल करें, सेल्फ डिसिप्लिन करें, और जो हमारी जो तरीके हों उनको extrinsically motivated हों. जो when I talk about capable, energized and motivated, so do something to obtain something else. This is extrinsically motivated. Somebody has said that I will give you this much money and you have to engage these many classes. This is one part which we do. Intrinsically motivated people will demonstrate self-determination by doing something for their own sake. And that psyche has to come into ourselves, has to be internalized, and then we become a teacher who will be known for always. And we also have several such teachers. When we go down the memory lane, we remember those teachers who made a dent in our life. So we have to become that kind of teacher who always make you resonate. I have to become like him. So that should come and increase motivation when they are given some personal choice. So autonomy is given to you, and then you have to think how we can respect this autonomy by giving more to the institution, to the center, right? So self-efficacy becomes important, for which we have to groom ourselves. We have to make sure the students are not overly aroused or anxious, teach specific strategies, help students develop short and long-term goals, provide students with support from positive adult and peer models. And we are becoming role model. We are role model. We do not know that somebody is copying my style. So we have to be always conscious that whatever I'll do, somebody will be copying me. And from that perspective, we have developed this particular model in which you see there are certain points which I would like to emphasize here. When we get inducted into the system, the management or the administration or the vice chancellor or the search committee, they search for what? That I have got all around first class, I have got a PhD from outside, or I have done a good problem in my PhD. I enter into the system as a raw mind here. So you see the symbol that I am raw mind. Despite the fact that I am capable, I have learned something, but I am raw mind. Then you are subjected to some kind of induction strategy. This best mind is again trained so that he becomes focused. So you are oriented towards the higher education needs, the pedagogy, how you are going to use the technology embedded teaching, learning, the faculty induction program. So what this raw mind becomes, it becomes a sort of focused, oriented towards the higher education. Then on a periodic interval, what we do, we train you by way of domain knowledge, sort of some refresher courses. And then you see, this is a kind of example, which is a reactor, nuclear reactor. Learning something, and then when you start teaching, you come to know that many of the things which you learned is still to be learned. And then when you engage your class, every day you learn something and you know how to present, how to make it. So that kind of reactor activity takes place in your brain. And then you become more oriented towards your research problem. You get better insight for your research problem. When you take classes, you answer those questions. And once that is taking place, the next step is what? Cross-fertilization of ideas. Means you are subjected to mingling or intermingling with the other disciplines. Then you look at that, see, I'm from physics. If suppose biology people are working with me, how we can have a good collaboration. So what I know, what they don't know, what they know, what I don't know, that kind of exchange takes place. And then what we do, we cross-fertilize our ideas, and that brings something new. And that something new is what? Is solving the real problem. And the solution of that real problem is not domain specific. It lies at the interface of many such disciplines. And that happens only when we start collaborating with the people. And that is another dimension which we have to add during our course of life. So this is the life cycle of a teacher. There are many, always there are ups if you are following those practices. You are not a sort of study that you have entered into and then you have just remained like this. Then you take the leadership role. You are also given how to work in a team. And after that, when you retire or you become sort of स्थित प्रज्ञ हो गए, आपको बुद्धत्व की प्राप्ति हो गई, तो आप एक enlightened soul की तरह समाज में, society में, you'll become torch bearer. Or not only your problem which you used to solve when you were engaging class, but now you can solve the problem of society. Many elements are there. So your duty does not end here. Your duty becomes more important when you retire or when you reach to the higher rung of your career. So that is what is expected from us, from the teachers from this higher education institution. You know, good university only teach. Good university produces graduates, whereas great university transform and great university produces leaders. So my talk for this particular capable, energized, motivated faculty would be for opting for continuous professional development, for quality culture and adaptability, which will be an attempt to the answer of competitiveness in higher education. And this chart gives you your you should be touched. तो अभी हम लोग बात करते हैं कि जो आजादी का अमृत काल है, इस अमृत काल में हमने आपको डराया कि इतना बड़ा सिस्टम है, 15 लाख लोग हैं. अब हम लोग उस 15 लाख लोगों को उनके पूरे शैक्षणिक काल में जो उनका टीचिंग लाइफ साइकिल है, एक बार कम से कम उनको टच करें हर चरण पर. हर चरण का मतलब when they enter into the system, when they need to get refreshed of ideas, when the cross fertilization has to take place, or when they have to take the leadership role. So how we are going to do that? That is also another challenge, and for which we are having these 4 steps. The first step is the newly appointed, the mid-career faculty, the senior level HODs, and also the top level leadership management. This is all being formulated, and very recently Government of India has also constituted capacity building commission. So we are thinking of having all such kind of facilities wherein the HRDCs, the Atal initiatives, the Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya National Technology Mission, which is there, under which NRCs are there, about 90, and then the NITers are there, and ITTTs are there. So how they can be used for different purposes. And this can only be done if I use technology heavily, and that can be integrated so that many of the programs now will be offered online or in a blended mode. And our purpose is to make our every teacher enabled with the technology. This is all in NEP 2020. This is again a challenge which I started from. So looking at this huge number, how we are going to address, how we are going to touch their lives during this Amrit Kal. And this is not only limited to those conventional ways. Anybody, even Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth can also think of organizing FDPs, and we are open to that. That can be through third-party evaluation, outcome-based. If they are serving the purpose, they can always be providing hand-holding to the teachers. That is what is expected. These are the initiatives which we have in terms of Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya National. It's about 66 HRDCs are there. About 748 districts out of this, 665 districts are covered under Atal Academy. And then we have faculty trained by NITers, Atal Academy CPDPs host in each state. And this is the number which we have. So I'm talking about the resource mapping, how we are going to be available for all the teachers who are in the system, and how we are going to make our inclusive way of looking at the teacher education program. We have also come out with a system that is Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Dhar was also member of this committee. So we came out with the mentoring guideline. Mentoring guideline would be to provide handholding to the newcomer teacher by senior faculty, and the pairing will take place, and all related issues of challenges in the higher education system shall be handled with this mentor-mentee system in teaching system also. That is what we have. And to conclude, we have to look many things. I'm not going to do it. Last slide is, this is an important slide to आपको जरा झकझोरने की जरूरत है कि आपने देखा होगा कि ये एक पिक्चर है, जिस पिक्चर को लेने के लिए लोगों ने, उनको पुलित्जर प्राइज चाहिए था. तो पुलित्जर प्राइज के लिए they took 20 minutes to find a scene in which this starving child is moving towards United Nations support system. So somewhere some food grain is being distributed. So this child is approaching to that place, but this fellow is also looking, the moment that he dies, he can have his own food, right? So this picture was captured by whom? Carter. And they took 20 minutes to chase this vulture so that they can get this girl who is crawling towards the feeding center. And it appeared in a newspaper on March 26th, 1993. Within 1 year, by April 1994, they were awarded by this Pulitzer Prize for the photo. And then somebody called him, that fellow, the Carter, how many vultures were there? So he said, Carter said, oh, don't you see in the picture there is only one vulture? The fellow on the other side, he said, no, there were two vultures. That hit him in such a manner that after that he started analyzing who was that second vulture. He found himself the second vulture. Instead of helping this child, that fellow was looking for what? For getting that Pulitzer Prize, for which he wasted 20 minutes. By 20 minutes, he would have taken this child to the shelter where this fellow could have been helped, so that this child could have been saved. He was taking. So as a teacher, you have to put, not as a vulture, put in this scene, if suppose somebody is coming to you for what? For the quest of knowledge. What you are going to do? You are not going to waste your time. Whatever time you have, whatever best intellect you have to help that child so that he is liberated from all the elements. And liberated from all the elements means what? आप किसी को ज्ञान दे दीजिए, उसका सारा लिबरेशन हो जाता है, उसको पैसा रुपया नहीं चाहिए. यही मुझे ज्ञान प्राप्त हो जाए कि मुझे और कुछ नहीं चाहिए. ज्ञान क्या है? Give the importance, and then you can always see. And this fellow committed suicide within 3 months after that call he received. So this is one story which makes you always moved. तो हमेशा ध्यान में ये रखना चाहिए कि हम जब जहां पर हैं, जो बच्चे मुझसे पढ़ने आ रहे हैं, क्या हमारी वो एबिलिटी है जिस एबिलिटी से हम उसको ट्रेन कर पा रहे हैं. 15 लाख टीचर्स में भी कोई भी अगर लोग ऐसा रहा जिसको कि हम लोग नहीं टच कर पाए, तो वो उसी प्रकार का होगा कि जैसे वायरस का वैक्सीनेशन करते हैं, एक आदमी बच गया तो दूसरे को पोलियो हो जाएगा, जैसी बात होनी चाहिए. तो हम लोगों को स्वयं उद्यत होना चाहिए इन तरह की टीचिंग प्रोग्राम्स में आकर के. अपने को लर्निंग को ये नहीं माना कि अब खत्म हो गया लर्निंग के बाद, तो डिग्री मिल गई, सब कुछ मिल गया. एवरी डे यू हैव टू लर्न फ्रॉम योर स्टूडेंट्स, फ्रॉम योर क्लास. And also, if you find something which is coming difficult to you, you can always approach your mentor or whatever. So I started with one such photograph which was published on 12th July of this 2022, which I showed. This is the biggest ego smasher. अपने को आप क्या समझते हैं? अपने को हम क्या समझते हैं? इतने बड़े यूनिवर्स में इतना बड़ा स्टार जो कि जिसका डायमीटर सन से और सैटर्न के बीच के दूर का है, वो एक स्पेक की तरह दिखाई पड़ता है. और इतने मिलियन अरबों वर्ष के बाद अब मुझे पता चल रहा है कि वो भी यहाँ पर है, कहाँ पर है. तो व्हाई टू वेस्ट टाइम? बी मोटिवेटेड, बी एनर्जाइज्ड. यू आर कैपेबल, यू कैन ऑलवेज टेक challenge. I can take some of the questions if you wish. I guess I have completed my talk well in time.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We have one question from Dr. Manish Joshi. His question is, nowadays critical thinking and creativity are taught in the university level. Kindly share recent trends in the subject which can be included.
Trends in this subject which can be included, that is critical thinking and creativity. So it is up to you how you are going to frame the question. I gave an example. That example was what? If suppose you have got the answer, you tell me. I asked you that you have got 12 balls. Out of those 12 balls, one ball is dissimilar to the rest of 11. You have got 3 opportunities to having a weighing balance, and tell me, with 3 such weighing processes, you have to identify which ball is dissimilar. You can always frame the questions which can ignite the mind to think in a different fashion. So that is what is important, and that can never ever come into textbooks or any reference books. We are the people who has to come forward for having these kind of questions framed, and then critical thinking will come forward. So it's a challenge on us, right?
Sir, I have one question. It's not related to the topic. Like you talked about the various research projects, funding agencies, and all. So nowadays, the focus is mainly on interdisciplinary sort of projects. So can you guide us that what are the various agencies where we can go for the interdisciplinary projects for funding and all?
During COVID, many of the funding agencies are themselves struggling to get funds from government so that they can. But there are, if you are, what is your background? Which discipline you pursue?
From management, sir.
From management.
Yeah.
So we require most of the funds in science. But in coming days, the National Research Foundation (NRF) is being set up very soon under NEP 2020. And the purpose of NRF is not to ignore the social sciences, humanities, management background teachers. They can also get funding at equal footing. So earlier it was a bias. The DST, DBT, CSIR, ICMR, they all used to give funds only to the science teachers. Now, if suppose you wish to go for some kind of study which requires interdisciplinarity, then definitely NRF can help you in funding as much fund as you want. So that is what is envisaged, and that is possible because as per policy, 6% of GDP has to go to higher education. We are paying that much, not that much, but definitely some of the money goes through these funding agencies to the universities, DST, DBT, DS, and others. But they can be clubbed together and they can be given to the faculty members from other disciplines also. So I expect that in coming future, it will be a reality that everybody will get funded if they have got a challenging problem to work on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Any other question from the participants? I guess we have one more question. Thank you for the FDP based on teaching. These days, institutes are focusing on administrative tasks and little bit on research for faculty members, but teaching is not in focus now.
I agree with you. I agree with you that we are appointed for teaching, but we are asked for our research contribution. But the answer to this question is very simple. You can take these 3 dimensions. These are 3 dimensions. Looks like this is X direction, this is Y direction, this is Z direction. So X is teaching, Y is research, and Z is community engagement. Looks as if they are 3 independent 3 axes. But unless otherwise you do good research, your teaching will not improve. Right? Unless otherwise you are connected with the community, your research will have no impact. So despite the fact that they look 3 different directions, but they are all entangled. Entangled means they are all interdependent, interconnected. Doing administration does not mean that you are doing something wasteful. You can always improvise ways and methods by which your teaching load, the students' life in the campus becomes easier, like they can be supported. So, as vice chancellor or as a director, if I don't keep everything in a smooth way, not go and teach it in the class. So if I perform the duty of proctor, if I perform the duty of dean student welfare, or if I'm a superintendent of a hostel, that means what? I am facilitating the students, and the students are relieved from their other burden, and because of that, they could concentrate in my class, right? So one should not think as if it is a burden on us because something is coming which is beyond my jurisdiction or my sort of job. Research is always a focus. It should be there. It always goes back in your mind, even if you are sleeping. If you are engaged into some problem, it will always haunt you. That does not affect your teaching. That improvises your teaching. So this is a way of looking a problem, not considering it as a problem, right? So think over it. You will find it now. It will be more easier for you to understand and to work in that direction. Yes.
Yes, sir. I guess we do not have any questions now. Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time with us. And your session is wonderful, thought-provoking session where we discussed about the evolution of Indian higher education, establishment of modern universities, how science and technology
there is one question, sir. Is there any punishment given to second vulture? No. Somebody has asked, is there any punishment given to second vulture? Second vulture was punished by himself. So if I consider myself a culprit, so I cannot face a mirror where I can say I can stay comfortably. So it is the inner conscience which is important. Nobody is going to tame you. Nobody is going to punish you because you are yourself autonomous. You are yourself I can say that the superhuman being in the society. Teacher of higher education institution is always considered on top of the echelon. So it is not, don't consider yourself vulture, but the person who was second vulture, he punished himself, he committed suicide. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah. Once again, sir, thank you so much for such a wonderful session and thought-provoking rather. There are so many things we are not knowing about higher educations that we came to know today. And we are looking forward to some more FDPs in which we would like to invite you as a chairperson. And I'll speak with Vice Chancellor, sir, related to that. So once again, thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time. Thank you so much, sir.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. With this, we end our session 1, and now we are starting with the session 2, and the topic of the session 2 is teaching through gamification. So today we have with us Dr. Vinod Dumblekar, sir. Dr. Dumblekar, sir, is a trainer, a researcher, a multidisciplinary consultant, and management teacher. He has a postgraduate degree in business administration from Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi, and doctorate PhD in management psychology. He has over 4 decades of managerial and entrepreneurial experience in commercial and merchant banking, finance and financial services, information technology, and management education. He has held a variety of senior positions as a bank manager, professor, president, and director in different organizations. He has written a book and published papers on simulation games, marketing, finance, learning, and management psychology. His paper on simulation games were presented and published for conferences at Munich, Atlanta, Singapore, Warsaw, and Bangkok. Sir has developed and conducts simulation-based experiential learning games under Mantis brand in business operations, business strategy, corporate strategy, marketing and brand management, entrepreneurship, project management, coal-based power station, and bank management for managers and management students. He has conducted games at over 80 management and engineering institutes and over 50 business firms in nearly 30 Indian cities and in Dubai, Austria, and Thailand. He is the only Indian since 2004 in the International Simulation and Gaming Association ISAGA. He has been associated with the Thai Simulation and Gaming Association Bangkok since 2010. He is India's most experienced authority and only researcher in software based simulation games. Sir has independently executed projects in financial restructuring, accounting system for student assignments, training need systems, session plan and materials, statutes and rules, key performance indicators, productivity linked bonus schemes, and capacity enhancement. Sir has a mentor and judge for a business plan competition at IIT and NIITs for almost a decade. He advises K-12 schools, business firms, and startups. He is a member of editorial boards in India and abroad, and on board of studies in Indian universities. He earned the Best Manuscript Reviewer Award at ISAGA 2018 conferences, Bangkok, and was the chair for special track at ISAGA conference in Warsaw. Sir conducts program and consults on three dimensions of attitude and skills and student. To name a few are campus to corporate, creativity and innovation, employability skills, and many more. Mantis is the country's only organization and devoted solely to simulation games and other experiential forms of learning. It has developed the widest range in the simulation games in India in terms of complexity, objectives, and range of scenarios for managers and students of management and engineering. Mantis is managed and led by Dr. Vinod Dumlekar sir with inputs and other professionals, academics, and researchers in India and abroad. It has conducted games for firms like Tata Aditya Birla Group, BHEL, Godrej and Boyce, Siemens, Indian Oil Corporation, NTPC, Reliance, John Deere, Mother Dairy, Canara Bank, and many more. He is the only Indian in the International Simulation and Gaming Association where he held the membership for standing committees and advisory committee. He is the founder of Indian Simulation and Gaming Association. He is India's most experienced authority and the only researcher in software-based simulation games. On behalf of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapith Vishwavidyalaya, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's up to now. Over to you, sir, for your deliberation.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Shall I begin? I'll start with uploading my screen. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Good afternoon to all teachers assembled here for this FDP. Today's session covers two important topics. One is about gamification, which I'll cover in the next 15 maybe minutes or so. And the remaining period, I'll cover simulation. Gamification is to engage the attention of the student and get him emotionally connected with his learning. Simulation is to do the same, but with his intellect. That means to get him to focus on what he is learning and take it further from there. Let me take you slide by slide. I'll go a little faster because I have less time now. Before we understand what a game is, we need to, gamification is, we need to understand what is a game. We've all seen games everywhere, but as a teacher would normally do, he starts with the definition. And as you know, I've deliberately put this up here to tell you how boring a definition is to a student. It's a very long statement that the student cannot remember. He tries to mug it up for the examination, and hopefully he will remember some of it. But you have all known what a game is. So a simple form of looking at a game, again, in academic language, is a system where players come together to conflict with one another, not to cooperate. And the system is contained by rules and regulations. And of course, there's a quantifiable outcome. Let me explain this very quickly so that we can go and understand gamification from this point, this particular platform. It's a system of moving parts. That means we have a beginning, we have an end, there are lots of things inside. A spider web is like a system. That is, all the threads of the net are connected. If you touch one, the other thing moves. Players' engagement is essential. If they sit around not doing anything, then they're not engaged, they're not connected with each other. There is a conflict. If they were in cooperation, it would not be a game. I cannot think of a game, and I don't think you can also, where people engage together as a cooperation. I'm sure there must be, but I can't think of any. The goal is the one that drives the players in conflict with each other. And that makes them think up how to get there. Now, to prevent them and to organize these players in a particular way so that they don't hurt each other, we have rules. The rules are to do with do's and don'ts, penalties, rewards points, scoring points, etc., which act as feedback to the participants, and therefore the players get energized by the scoring points, and the rules push them gently towards the goal. And the goal is, here we say quantifiable, but you can also have colors. You can have grades as you have in examinations and tests, A+ and B- and so on, to be able to say that the goal has been reached. Let us see in visual form what is a game. In a game, there are players, and here you can see these players are in conflict. They're trying to get the ball. And if you can see, there are people who are probably this is the end of a match, so therefore they are victorious. There's a lot of energy and emotions, as you can see. This is all a part of a game. The game brings engagement, the game brings excitement with it. And that is what we would like to carry on to a gamified model of teaching. And of course, we have a beginning and an end in a game. The beginning and end is very precisely described. If you have to play snake and ladders or Sudoku, etc., you know what it begins with. If you have seen cricket or hockey, you know at what time and when the match comes to an end. And then, of course, you have resources. These resources also are bound by the rules. You can do this much, you can't do that much. The rules and the resources limit you to what you can do. For example, the dice cannot throw anything more than 12 or less than 2. So your choices are between 2 and 12. And here you can see a variety of rules. Don't do this, do this. Don't go there. If you do this, we'll penalize you, etc., etc., etc. So basically, let's summarize what a game is very quickly. It has people. It has a beginning and an end. It has resources. Without resources, what can you play? And of course, you have rules. These four you will find are critical to understanding what a game is. But if I were to take the understanding of the game a little further and expand the definition, let's see what you can get from here. These are also games. You can see Ukraine and Russia entangled in conflict. China and Taiwan has been there for a long time. We also had border skirmishes with our other countries. You must have heard about the recent game that Musk and Twitter have played. Musk made an attempt to buy out Twitter and then he withdrew. We don't know whether that is part of a master game which Musk has played. You all heard about the Chakravyuha, the ambush in Mahabharata, or you can ask your colleagues. Every child knows it from the time he has started listening to his mother's or father's tales. And then you have the game of dice. The dice seems to be everywhere, including real life. There's Ludo, there's snakes and ladders, the Mahabharata, of course. And I'll tell you a little about the game that I played recently called Catan. Then these guys used to play in a different way. Ilie Nastase was a tennis player who used to behave very badly on court, trying to pressurize the umpires and so on. That Nastase was actually compressed to nasty. He was a nasty player to be with. He used to fight every ball call on the edge of the ropes or whatever it is. Douglas Jardine, we have heard about it in cricket. You can see some of these actions later. I'm sure you can remember some of them. Maybe you can ask questions and you can reply to you. This is a big list. The last one, you can see dogs always in conflict about their turf, birds fighting with their area of wherever they are. And there is a book which I read long back, 20 years back, only about aggression, which said that if you put two fish in a tank, a small tank or a big tank, the big fish or one of them will become aggressive enough to be able to attack the other fish, however big the tank was. That means that's a game. And you have heard about goats on the mountains, which come all the way, cover maybe 2-3 kilometers, come together and have a clash for nothing at all. And that's a game again. And now we come to understand what is gamification. Gamification is not the making of a game. Gamification is the use of elements in typical games that you might have seen and how to use it in non-game contexts. In gaming context, you don't have to use it because elements are already there. So the best definition of gamification comes from Sebastian Detterding. To put it very simply, he said the use of game design elements in non-game contexts is gamification. That means you gamify a non-game context, you add elements of it, and you make it more exciting. Now, you have a second definition here, which is more or less the same thing. He put it in a very academic form. The features of an interactive system. This interactive word is important for a game. If only one person plays all the time, there is no sense. It's not a game. To motivate and engage end users through game elements and mechanics. By mechanics, we refer to rules and regulations. To understand how people react and learn in a gamified system or a game, we need to understand things like motivation and fun, and one other called flow. Let me take you through that process very quickly. An understanding of this will make us apply gamification in real life as well. Self-determination theory long back talked about three things that helped us change and grow and move this way and not that. That means it helped us, pushed us, shaped us, take new steps, new direction. The first one was that of autonomy. That is, if I am free to do what I want, I am wanting to grow bigger because the constraints of society or home or office will not stop me. If I'm allowed to test what I know, my competence, I think I'll be proud of what I achieve and I'll try to go on to do something more. Relatedness. I always compare myself with those around me. I would like to be better than my peer group. And although I may not shout out loud, I wish that people would come and praise me. And of course, I put up my selfies and social media, etc., etc. I won't go to the rest at the bottom of the line. Recently, a McKinsey article, perhaps about 2-3 months, spoke about an interview with Catherine Price, who defined fun. Fun is a very important component of games, and it's been very difficult for us to define fun because we think fun is to do with jokes or fun is to do with laughter alone, or that is only fun. That's what we think. But from a psychological perspective, Catherine Price has said fun is to do with three elements which are similar to what we just saw with respect to autonomy, competence, and relatedness. How are they? One is to do with playfulness. That means the freedom to play. Play means you can do what you want within a limited territory. That's what children do. But that's what we say that only children do. Often, whenever you have the freedom to do something, you often do whatever you want within that particular age. A second is to do with connection, and you have seen something here which I spoke about, relatedness. And the third is about flow. Flow is about how we respond to competence and problems, how we use a competence to solve problems. I will explain flow in my next 1 or 2 slides at a theoretical level, that means at the conceptual level, and expanding it to a larger frame. When we put the freedom to do something, that is play, add it to the ability to solve problems through flow, and realize that other people are watching us and where we can be praised and we can get feedback from others in terms of a connection, that is where we reach the highest signs of fun. Now, these are things that we must be able to use when we gamify an educational perspective, such as teaching in the class. Now, what happens when we have fun? Well, three things happen. That is what Catherine Price says. She says that we are exceedingly happy when we have fun. We are more productive, and resilience. That means whenever we have setbacks, when we make a mistake, when somebody shouts at us, or we don't feel so unhappy. We are able to take it in a stride and continue with our normal work. We don't feel so bad. But this is something that I don't know how many of you have seen. Ralph Koster is a past master at playing games, understanding games. He's been a researcher. And this is probably the most complete definition of fun that I've seen, which is something that is important for us to be able to apply in our gamification in the classroom and gamification anywhere else as well. So let us see what fun is and how we can apply it in gamification. Fun arises from mastery. And mastery is a word that we saw earlier in terms of competence. That means we would like to tell the world that we are better. When you play a game with somebody else, let us say table tennis, or maybe you would like to play Ludo or something, you would like to show that you are better than that other person. It also would like to show how good you are. That means you would like to demonstrate your competence and your superiority. You would like to do better than yesterday. It arises out of comprehension. So there's no chance coming up here. Of course, it is possible that some chance elements will also always be there when you play cricket or badminton or even Ludo. You have that dice comes into play. But that's an aspect of life that we must accept. But here the comprehension says that you must work hard. That means you must work at acquiring the mastery. And that is why you feel the fun. It is also when you solve puzzles. Here, the puzzles are what we often call in real life problems. When we accept a problem and we say that we will solve it, it becomes a challenge. When we solve a challenge, we become masters, and we become excited at the thought. And we would have learned a new thing, and we would have risen from yesterday's level of learning to today's level of learning, which is higher than yesterday. And that makes everything fun. Take non-game problems that you have achieved, which you've accomplished, things that you have acquired, maybe petty arguments with your friends, and see how excited you have become. That also is fun. But the last line is the key to all learning. With games, learning is the drug. That means if you have learned something, whether in games or otherwise, this is not related only to games. If you have learned something, that is a drug, because it is something that only you have learned. You may be sitting next to other people also. All of you must be part of a team that has won the game. But your satisfaction, your fun is exclusive, is private. What's going on in your mind is so exciting. And that is what you must strive for when you gamify something. Flow is a concept, I think Price has said somewhere here, over here, line number 3. What is flow? Flow is connected to our sense of competence. If you have a problem that you can solve with your ability, your skills, your competence, that is flow. But if the problem engages you such a way that you forget everything else to do, time passes by, you get a phone call which does not distract you. There are people at the door. You have not seen them, you can't hear them. There's a lot of noise outside the house, you can't hear that. There are people around here, going around here, so you're still reading that book or a newspaper. Let us say when you're sitting in a public place, that is flow. Flow is a time, a space-time where you're not distracted by what you're doing. You're totally engrossed. And that happens when your skills match the difficulty of the problem. That means here is a hint. If you can gamify your learning in such a way that the problem that you give to your students are exactly matching the difficulty levels, then they would be able to solve the problem and they would be able to experience flow, which, as you saw earlier, is a component of fun. Now, if the problem is too easy, there is no interest. It does not challenge me. If the problem is too difficult, it is frustrating. It puts me off. It insults me. I am scared. I don't want to go through with it. So you must find a problem that is just right, which is pretty difficult when you're handling things in a class. 40 people, 60 people, all of different levels of ability, and it's very difficult. But when you can do this, you can enhance the student's curiosity. You can give him a sense of control. He gets that autonomy to do something, and he can shout at the end of it and say, I did this alone. So now at last we come to gamification and what we are doing it and why. First of all, we gamify something with game elements in a non-game event, like teaching, like assignments, like tests, etc., etc. So therefore, we offer an experience to challenge the student's abilities and confidence. It first affects his abilities, where he can conquer the problem, and therefore he becomes more confident and more capable and wanting to solve another problem. He wants to play a game. The second issue of learning through games is to be able to help measure, report, and applaud. Ideally, you should allow the student to measure his own learning. But you can always applaud what he has done. Ideally, you should applaud how he has done something. That is a process and not the accomplishment alone. We have several selfies and stuff like that you can see on social media. You come to the end of it saying that I did this, but nobody explains how it was done. So if you can applaud the student's learning process, how did he do it? He is more likely to be concerned on learning more, which has helped him reach the conclusion or the victory. And finally, if the student likes what has happened because of conquering a problem, because of solving something, he wants to go back and do that. He remembers it again and again. And then he recommends it to everybody and saying that, well, if you're a teacher, if this is a class, he likes the class. So here is a very quick way. I know it's very long, but you can just take up 2 or 3 things which you can use for gamification in the classroom. If you look at these things deeply, you will find that you already have been using gamification methods in class for years. The term has come recently, but when you are given marks to your students, that's a gamification approach. When you declare a student successful with respect to whatever he has done, well, he feels nice and he studies that particular subject more. He is curious. He wants to know more. So that's another gamification approach. If you are given a particular difficult question paper, you find all the students angry with you or angry with the question paper, which is, I hope, which is what happens. You realize that gamification has not worked. It has failed. There are various ways. It's a combination of problem, challenge, what the student can do, how you can help him understand his own problems on his own. You can chip in and fit in the balance part. That means if the learning is about 100, ideally he should be able to provide feedback to himself for about 75 to 80% of the way. The last 10-20%, I think you need to fill the gap. There are various ways here. I've just listed it here. I'm brushing through because there is a little time. I think you can see what it is. I'll speak about that competition last for Harvard. Apparently, this is a tale which I've not been able to confirm. Apparently, Harvard used to have classes where they used to say that the last 4, the bottom 4 students are deemed to have failed no matter what. So that's a very powerful competitive statement where everybody wants to get as much as possible against another. But whatever you do, the last 4 fail. Here is another list that you can actually apply in the classroom. When you attempt something, you can start, because you're doing it the first time. These are suggestions, these are recommendations here. Take your steps very slowly. Don't hurry through and run a huge gamification program. Even if it is on paper, properly drafted, etc., and double check with everything. Don't do it. Run it in small steps. Ask feedback from the students whether it's been done correctly, how do they like it, and so on. It has to match the students' ability, the problem that you give them. You must applaud the process, not the result. You will be happy with the result, but you must be able to review the process. You must ask him, how did you do it? He feels happy about it. Ask him to talk. You have to ask him to summarize, ask him whether he can teach others, whether he can explain what happened in different ways. You could probably ask him, can you write out how you did this? He'll feel very happy. And when he writes out, when he speaks, when he teaches others and all that, you give him one more chance to be able to embed that learning, that gamified learning in him completely for the rest of his life. You could, another word like gamify, you could storify it. You could add stories and all that for the problem, so that you have done that before. It's called a case study. But a case study is something very real. You could storify it with anything, with imaginary names and all that. Probably you've done that. You must forgive error, but not avoid it. You have to be able to get the student himself to look at the error and correct it. And of course, you must focus on the weakest student, because if you're concerned about marks for yourself, if you'd like to tell people that I did the greatest gamification effectiveness possible, then the greatest effectiveness possible, the learning is possible with the weakest student, not the brightest. I will pass this. I will stop for maybe a couple of minutes. If there are any questions, I'll take those questions quickly. Dr. Saini.
Hello, ji sir.
If there are any questions, I'll take them, because the next program I'm going to talk about is about simulation. That's why.
Yes, sir. Sir, we have 20 minutes more. We can start with the simulation.
Okay. If anybody has questions, shall I go ahead? I see there's nothing in the Q&A so far.
Sir, because we have started late, so we can continue till 1:20, and after
Okay,
that we can have a break for 1 hour. We'll start the post-lunch session by 2:20.
Sure. I'll take a minute, because whatever has been covered, perhaps the listeners would like to absorb it. If there's some page that you would like to look at, let me know.
I request all the participants, if they are having any questions, they can put it in question and answer box so that it can be taken up.
Gamification, a project or an initiative or a step that you might take has to begin with a problem, has to enable the student to be able to solve that problem. You start with a very small effort. You need to get the student to be able to do things on his own. It is his independence, autonomy we have spoken about. He should be able to feel that I did this myself. You stay far away. And you need to be able to applaud the effort that he has put in. You could ask him to describe to his colleagues in the classroom, how did you do it, and so on. And remember, when he explains that, he is actually telling you how he learned, and that is more important than what he has learned. I will now go to the second part of my presentation today. Today, we are talking about simulation, which is not as exciting as gamification, but it focuses on the content part of our learning and our education. Again, I start with definitions, because definitions helps us come on the same platform to be able to understand what we are speaking about. Globally, the word simulations and games, the meaning overlaps frequently. And some people say games and they mean simulations, and vice versa. Sometimes it is, we say simulation games to make it more clearer what we are speaking about. So here is somebody who speaks about simulation games as interactive representations of perceived reality, past, present, future, and for learning purposes. Elizabeth Clay has come on forums at the university earlier, so I thought this is the best definition that I have heard, I've seen, I have read in the last perhaps 20 years. So any representation of anything, I will add one more word, whether real or imagined, any narration, any explanation is a simulation, whether past or present. I'll come to examples later. So here is something that you can read while I explain. It's a cross section. Suppose you take a line and you take a cross section of it, you get a disk. That disk is a simulation, but the entire line is the reality. If you take a photo of a very tall building that you have very few, whichever you see, that photo is a simulation. The building actually that you saw, the original, that is reality. A simulation game. Now we can mix up the two. Cricket is a game, but it's not a simulation. It does not represent anything. It's an imaginary construct. Hockey, football, tennis, table tennis, these are games. But chess is a simulation. Chess simulates a battle between two different armies. So you have the soldiers, you have the knights, etc., etc. And the moves actually simulate a battle. Now, the rules are tighter, are smaller, and simpler. So therefore, you can see that the simulation is actually a very small fraction of something real. Now, what is the advantage that we have when you're looking at something smaller, in fact, when you have to look at real? We already have the case of what is called a case study. We can read a 2-page description of World War II, which took about, let's say, 6-7 years. You can read it within 2 pages or so and understand what the World War II is all about. Or you can read 40 pages of it, or you can read 4 or 5 books on it. There is a 6-session series on Netflix as well, if you want to see it on screen. So therefore, a simulation can be represented on a screen as well, but not merely in words. So it can be represented any which way you want. When a child plays with a toy car or a doll, a Barbie doll, for instance, well, that's a simulation. A lot of imagination is going on in the mind of the player and saying, oh, this is a big car and this is a big person. When kids play around with a kitchen set, a toy kitchen set, that's a simulation. So when you play with something smaller, you can also imagine the interactions with the imagined elements in that. When you play chess, you can see how the soldier and the knight, they confront each other and attack each other and so on. So when you do this, you can hear the larger purpose of what it is. Suppose you look at a toy car. Within the toy car, you can see the tires, there are seats over there. You can see the tiny steering wheel. So that's a picture about the larger one. And maybe you can drive one of those cars on the screen. And therefore, that also is simulation. There are more definitions. I won't go here. I'll go to the end of faster. But the simulation that we are exposed to, the kind that we are talking about in this session, is what Elizabeth spoke about, used for learning purposes. There is one other element which this definition does not address itself. We are talking about simulations where you are an actor there. That means you have a role there. You are a role player. It is not enough if you watch the World War II on the screen. You need to be maybe a general or soldier there. You need to enact it. Only then you feel that this is how the war was fought. That is where your emotions come into play. The difference could be like you playing cricket on a Sunday or you watching IPL on a whatever day you want. IPL is far away, it's on the screen. You don't engage with it so much as when you actually get your hands and your face and your knees dirty out there in the hot sun. That's it. So a simulation requires you to be an actor in the game. And it can be real, it need not be real, but it still enacts or it narrates or it represents something that may be real or may be imagined. A simulation is very tightly connected to a feature that we will call experiential learning. We will look at these 5 elements very quickly, and then we'll go to understand what is experience and learning. It is first to do with observation and sensing. That means when you are within simulation, that means when you have the toy car in your hand and you push it around, you get that excitement and feeling that you've driven the car. Of course, this is when you are maybe 30, 40 years back when you were a child, or when you held that toy, a Barbie doll or whatever it is, and play around with it. So you get to sense, and therefore you're emotionally charged. You feel, I am there, I am that doll, or maybe I am the driver in that small car. Then you also tend to watch yourself from a distance. So therefore, you connect this idea with that, and you are able to draw conclusions from there. Now, when Maslow, etc., makes up conclusions, we call it theory. But believe me, whatever conclusions we make out of any kind of observation, as long as those observations are there, are real, is a theory. So if you can see certain observations and you can draw conclusions from there, that's a theory. For example, look at this theory which I am going to offer to you. I see some clouds and it rains. I connect the two, and therefore I have a theory for you. Whenever there are clouds, it rains. Of course, when I see many times the same things happen, but once in a while the clouds don't lead to rain. So my experiential learning shifts. The quality of experience has shifted. And then I start doubting my own observation and conclusion, and I make amends. I say subject to this, subject to that. Maybe in the rainy season, the clouds lead to rain more or less, more often than if the clouds were to appear in the summer months of April and May. So when I tend to convert what I sense and feel, observations, into conclusions, I am deemed to have learned. If the three of us were watching an IPL match, each of us would observe and sense differently. Yes, we would observe differently even while we observe the same match on the screen. So therefore, it's a recognition that we are differently made, and this sense of difference between us is also a huge scope and opportunity for us to discuss and clarify what we learned. So you have the third thing, that is drawing conclusions and linkages. I linked the clouds to the rain, and therefore I took it further, such as testing the concept through an application. So whenever I saw clouds, whenever I went outside or before I went out, I took an umbrella with me. I was sure it would rain because that is my theory, which I call a conclusion here. Of course, sometimes it didn't rain. And then I looked at the clouds a little closer, and I realized that this time the clouds are not as thick as they were yesterday. So I don't need to take my umbrella out. So therefore, I qualified my learning with every new exposure to a similar experience. And I continued to learn. Finally, after application, creation, and internalization of meaningful knowledge, that means whatever I learned, initially that learning is very, how shall I put it, very obvious to me. That means when I look at a cloud, it's very obvious to me that I have to pick an umbrella and go out. After some time, it is virtually my subconscious acting on me. I don't even remember when I pick up that umbrella. It's like brushing my teeth. It's like when I drive my car, I can talk to other people and I can shift the gears and change the accelerator or whatever it is. I do it so subconsciously. I've internalized my experiences. And at that stage, I can continue my experience into something larger. Maybe I can eat and drink water while I drive. Maybe I can read a book while, I can listen to the phone while I hold an umbrella in my hand. Even at that time, I don't even remember that I have an umbrella in my hand. So that is totally internalized knowledge where it has gone into my subconscious. So listen and see where we began. We started with observation. We linked this with that. We came to that other, which we called a conclusion. After several repeated exposure to the same events, we corrected our conclusions and we created a theory for ourselves. Remember, the theory that you have for rain is different from the theory that other people in your own house have for the same event. And after some time, this became so ingrained in your subconscious that you forget that you take an umbrella for rain. Let's take it forward. To understand experience learning, we have to understand the concept called andragogy. Somebody called Malcolm Knowles spoke about it long back. He defined it, designed it. What is andragogy? We are all familiar with pedagogy. Pedagogy means the teaching of children. Even if your children are adults, 21, 22, 23 years old, doing BBA, BCA, MBA, etc., all of them who are adults, you still teach them as if they are children, which is bad. Now, what is the first reaction of an adult? Now, remember, you are adults, and I am sure you'll agree with me. First, you tell me, don't talk to me. I already know this. These are the things that are going on in your mind if you were to be a student in a class. And I suspect most of these things are going on in your mind now because you're an adult. You will say, I already know this. Don't tell me, I got other things to do. Part of your mind is engrossed with some problem at home, which you did not, you want to attend to. Some of the most studious amongst you are probably making notes somewhere, notes of something else to do later. You're not listening to me. You're not hearing me right now. Or maybe hearing me with 1 ear and the rest of it, I don't know what you're doing. But broadly saying, don't tell me, yes, sir, mujhe pata hai. That's an adult. But an adult is an adult because of the experience that he has had. He says, I know what to do best because I've done this before and this has succeeded. What you're telling me will not work with me, or what you're telling me I already know. So how do you convince the adult to learn? You don't convince him by giving more lectures or talking to him more often. Or by forcing him. Maybe that's the only way. That's why you have rules and authority everywhere in society, because otherwise no adult will learn. That's why we have traffic lights. Otherwise, every adult would say, why should I stop here? Who are you to tell me, etc. So adults are keen. Let me go through the bullets here. Adults are keen to know, why should I learn? What is of use to me? He says, what problem can I solve with this? Right now, many of you are asking me, what problem is this experience learning solve? Then what is out of use? Application centered. If I can use it for solving, that's good enough. Otherwise, what will I do with it? I don't want to remember it because there are other things in my mind. I have other problems. I have a family to look after. I have to go back and teach my students, etc., etc. You're centered on yourself. You're keen. You're not keen on passing an exam, etc. You're keen that it applies to you personally, the self. It is more connected to our internal mechanism rather than some external. I mean, I can't give you money and say that this is important to you because you have to do this, etc. This is important to you. I can't give you money and say entice you to study and learn. That will never happen. Not that I won't give it you, but if I have to give you, there's no way that I can convince you to study because I give you money. You will do it only if you're convinced to do so. That's the power of the adult, which is why we say take control of the learning process. And of course, guided by their own internal personality. So how do we go around this roadblock? It's a huge roadblock because all your students are adults. A 5-year-old child that might have tried to touch the flame of a candle and got burned is an adult by virtue of that one single experience. And with respect to that personal experience alone, is not likely to touch anything hot or anything that looks like a flame for the rest of her life before she becomes a real, maybe 12, 20, 30 years later, we realize that I think she made a mistake, etc., etc. We all make mistakes as children, and therefore we learn something better. We fall off of cycles. That's an experience that we work back on. And yet, if you were to learn cycling at an older age, we tell people, don't tell us what to do. I will find out myself. So how do we go around this roadblock? Well, the roadblock is this. We answer the questions that the person, the adult, has raised. You need to find a reason as to why he wants to learn. For example, you need to learn experiential learning so that you can make your students understand what are you teaching better and faster and simpler. You need to find a way to give a problem to the adult to learn. If you allow him a problem and say, how do you solve this problem? If you ask him, he will learn on his own, but he will ask you to stay away. Don't disturb me, he says. If you can find out a problem, I think that should be the first of your initiatives. And I think after that, I think maybe 60-70% is centered around that problem issue. So if you give a problem from where he can solve it, he will be able to use that as an experience, connect the links, draw conclusions, and therefore learn from there on his own without your intervention. So therefore, for you, instead of putting a picture of Maslow's hierarchy or something like that on the board, or something to do with Kotter or Kotler on the board, if you give them a problem, say, how do you solve this? And then you talk about it and then say, this is related to what Kotter or Kotler said and all that. I think that would be far better and far embedded in his mind than anything else. Which means you need to give him the autonomy to solve the problem. You need to be able to give him a problem that matches his understanding, maybe just beyond his problem area, if you want to, so that once in a while he comes to you and says that I don't understand this next feature, so you can intervene. And of course, when he does that, he talks to other adults and says, this is how I did that. So here you're mixing adulthood with gamification. And out of this experience, he understands how to learn better on his own. Your intervention is about 10% only. 90% of the time, therefore, you have to allow the problem, that is the adult, to find his own way around the problem. Here are examples of simulations I have written for you. A painting, a photo, a sculpture, a toy, a cartoon, these are still life simulations, that because they represent. But of course, they are not much use for us because we are not characters in the painting or photo. Unless we are a part within that, we take part, we do something, we don't learn. Watching something does not help us learn. But then we have plays, street plays, roles. If we are taking part as a role, as an actor there, we are more likely to learn because it forces us to do something there. A film, animation keeps changing, keeps our eyes connected, our ears open to what is being spoken, has a higher probability of engaging our attention and helping us learn than the still life or the play. That means your PPTs, like the PPT I'm showing you, is likely to be, not likely, definitely will be much less effective than if you were to get the participants, especially your adult learners, to watch a film about that same issue which you talk about by way of a PPT. Then a study, of course, you have to read. There's a lot of a case is a very uninteresting piece of thing, but a story is much more exciting. So maybe you can use a story to highlight leadership rather than come out with a case to talk about leadership again. You have seen films. All these films are also simulations. Some of them may not be real. Superman is real, not real, but it's a simulation. Hercules was some Greek or Roman story. Is it real? We don't know. An epic? Maybe. Matrix, the science fiction movie, it's a fantasy. Did it happen? It's supposed to happen several years in the future. It's a simulation. Can you create an artificial story for your students to act in? And therefore, by acting, they can become emotionally surcharged. From there, they can learn. I think that would be probably the finest way where you can mix gamification and simulation together. Learning from simulations is many. There are many ways to do that, especially, like I said, is to do with the central problem, the participation by the student, the way he engages himself, the way he draws conclusions, the way he gets excited because he is there, the central part of the simulation itself. I'll go a little faster. You can probably browse for this on the internet. It broadly says the same thing which I spoke about when I gave the example of the clouds and the rain. The concrete experience is the rain, the clouds. The reflective observation is what you find when you see the rain, when you connect the rain and the clouds. You see the abstract conclusion, the conceptualization at the bottom of the page. And then you see the active experimentation in terms of applying what you saw, what you felt. Most of the learning comes from emotions. So if you get people to become emotionally charged, angry, happy, excited, etc., from an event, I think some 80% of your learning is over. You don't have to put any more pressure on the student again. In learning, you often have different views of the same problem. I think it's worth it. It's nice. I mean, it would be a very boring experience if all of us saw the same thing and came to the same conclusions. What is this? Is this a jug? Is this a something, a flower pot? Or are these two people looking at each other? These are opinions. We played a recent simulation game. I call it a simulation game called Catan. This is barely 2 days back on a Sunday, where in the game we bought grain, we bought sand, we bought bricks, we bought sheep, and I think something else I forgot. And we battled against each other, 4 of us. We had to make roads, we have to build cities, we have to build settlements and all that. There are picture cards. You can see the cards and the tokens, and on the left-hand side, you can see the cards. It's a very complex game, but it simulated a colonizing experience. If I were to go to an island somewhere in the Pacific, I would do the same thing, buying, selling, exchanging. It was an experience that helped me understand strategy, decisions, and so on. So games help you learn things faster. I mean, in 10 hours of sitting in the game, I covered probably a year's content in terms of strategy, decision making, etc., without the heavy maths. This is a game set of people playing around. You can see the expressive faces. Games help you think. I will stop here with the conclusion that the objective of gamification is to engage the learner emotionally. And the objective of simulation is to convey more meaning than by mere teaching. That is it is to help him understand what is real. I will end here. If you have 2 minutes, I can show a video of about 30 seconds.
Yes,
Madam?
sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thinking in action.
So we could not see the video.
What does this show? People playing. When people play in teams, they learn from each other, they debate with each other, tell each other you are wrong. They have different perceptions. So many perceptions get exchanged. They are having an artificial experience. It's a manufactured experience of playing a game. That experience helps them learn. In about 6 hours of this game, they learned about accountancy, financial management, production, teamwork, how to motivate each other, how to learn from each other. So many things that takes about 6-8 months in a typical first year MBA program. So games are powerful, and 1 minute, I'll just get out of this. Yes, ma'am. Games are powerful. Simulations depict or help you depict what is reality. So therefore, people can learn. If you can mix the two, you have a very powerful combination to help students learn maybe many times faster than normal board and chalk methods or like PPT. If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you. I'll be grateful to answer.
Sir, we have two questions. One is simulation is used to analyze a business model, good for BBA and MBA students. But where can we use gamification while teaching business students?
The 4 students you saw, they were playing a business simulation game. In fact, they were playing in a management school. They are learning about business and management. Their business classes, or rather their curriculum classes, have not started so far. They have not yet been exposed to typical the first year of the MBA program. So therefore, you can see that they're learning from each other. There is no teacher in the classroom. I was only distributing paper and explaining things which they did not understand on their own. Their initiative to learn came from them. They were acting like adults, that is, answering questions for themselves. And they were self-motivated learners. All we did was give them a problem and said, solve it for yourself. Because there are people in teams, team learning is much more powerful than individual learning. Of course, both have their separate, unique features, both advantages and disadvantages. But here you could see 4 people talking and teaching each other.
Right, sir. So we have one more question is how should we evaluate students if we teach through simulation?
We can evaluate them in terms of objectives, which means your objectives must be clearly stated for yourself, if not to the students. Your objectives can be stated in terms of Bloom. I think yesterday one speaker referred to Bloom.
Yes.
So you talk in terms of Bloom, and you talk in terms of not the bottom part. Bottom is about remembering. Don't use remembering. In terms of applying, analyzing, etc. You set the questions with respect to them. Or calculating or reviewing it. Use those verbs that are used. You can see the words. You can Google it out and find the words. So define the objectives first. If you don't have objectives, you can't do the assessment. Then you set the questions with respect to the objectives. Objective 1, he must be able to do this. So the question 1 would be, was he able to do this? Ideally, you don't do the assessment. Let the student to do the assessment. In the game that I just showed you, that was at IIM Nagpur early this month, we asked the students, tell us, what did you understand? And they told us. We did not intervene much. We said, you must know what you understood. How can anybody know what you understood? How can I know as a teacher what you understood? Can you, sitting next to another person anywhere, know what he is thinking? At the most, you can do it with respect to a written test. But understanding is something larger. So allow the person to speak, ask him to, but you ask him very narrow questions. Don't ask questions at the bottom of the Bloom pyramid. Ask him from level 2, level 3, and so on. If you do it for the first time, it will be very difficult to make the questions. But after that, once you get into the third or fourth question, after that becomes very easy.
Sir, one more question is, does Mantis have an interference for simulation?
I'm sorry, what is the question again?
Does Mantis have an interface for simulation?
I don't understand what is the interface mean, because we are only into
Interference. Maybe she must be asking. Just a minute.
Maybe you can ask that person to ask.
Yeah. Simnalika, you can ask your question directly. I have promoted you as a panelist. You can ask question directly. Simnalika.
He or she has come online.
She has come. Yes, Simnalika. Unmute yourself, please.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Yeah, but you're not visible. You're not visible.
So actually, sir, I just attended one simulation workshop wherein the facilitator had a interface or a software in order to do these simulation exercises. So does Mentis also provide such a platform for everyone?
No, our simulations are all face-to-face, because face-to-face interactions are most powerful.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's like watching IPL and say, I can play cricket very well.
Yes, sir.
Or you can read a book and say, I have also can write a book like this.
Yes.
You actually have to do it. You saw those students in the video. They were actually calculating things that they have never been taught. They were doing things without a teacher's intervention.
In the real time, they are learning something.
Yes, and they're doing many things. They were doing interdisciplinary. They were thinking business, they were taking decisions, etc., which would take another 3-4 months for people to talk to them. Physical, face-to-face, and they were playing a role. In an online simulation, you don't feel the role.
Yes, sir.
Even in online, let's say somebody takes up a racing car simulation, you don't feel like you're the driver. Of course, perhaps, I don't know. I don't have, but only when you're sitting in the car, it's a different thrill.
Yes, definitely, sir.
So your specific question, no, we don't have. Although we play online games, but we don't. We dissuade on games.
Okay.
I guess that has answered all your queries, Simnalika, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks a lot, sir, for answering.
Thank you, everybody, for patient listening. Thank you for Sri Vaishnav University for inviting me for this. Thank you, ma'am, for everything.
Thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time. And I hope all the participants must have learned the importance of gaming and simulation in their curriculum. Once again, thank you so much, sir. And with this, we end our first pre-lunch session, and we are meeting again around 2:05 or 2:10 for the post-lunch session. And the speaker of this session is Professor Dr. Karunesh Saxena. He is a Vice Chancellor of Sangam University. So we will take a break for lunch, and we will be meeting again at 2:10. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you very much. Good day, sir.